In 1967, the United States was a country at a crossroads. The Vietnam War divided the nation, the Civil Rights Movement reshaped its soul, and the U.S. Mint itself faced a crisis of confidence. The early 1960s coin shortage had sent panic through banks and businesses. People were hoarding silver, melting down dimes and quarters for metal profit. To restore order, the Mint made a controversial choice. It removed mint marks entirely from circulating coins. No D for Denver. No S for San Francisco. No familiar P for Philadelphia. Just the plain, unmarked faces of Lincoln, Jefferson, and Washington, stripped of identity to calm a fearful economy. Most Americans never noticed. But for collectors, that missing letter whispered a secret. The 1967 Lincoln 1-cent coin seemed unremarkable, 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc, about 3.11 grams. The design had barely changed since 1909, when Victor David Brenner's portrait first immortalized Lincoln on the humble cent. But the absence of a mint mark turned 1967 into a quiet anomaly, a year when every coin bore the same silent signature. What no one knew was that a small handful of these coins, struck under unusual conditions, would one day surface as extraordinary rarities, pieces so well preserved, so brilliantly defined, that collectors would battle for them in hushed auction halls half a century later. One such coin, a 1967 Lincoln 1. Cent with no mint mark, recently stunned the numismatic world when it was valued near $966,000. A coin that once bought a single piece of candy, now worth more than most American homes. How could that happen? Let's begin with the truth behind the legend. In 1967, the Philadelphia Mint was under intense pressure. Production quotas skyrocketed to meet national demand, and new minting presses were working overtime. Under such strain, the die quality, the metal stamps that pressed the coin designs, varied wildly. Most coins from that year show weak strikes, die cracks, or uneven surfaces, but a very few, were struck early in the die's life, with perfect alignment, polished planchets, and crisp, almost glass-like details. Those early strikes became the diamonds among pebbles, coins that, under magnification, reveal razor-sharp details in Lincoln's hair, coat, and the word liberty, collectors call them proof-like or specimen strikes, though they weren't true proofs. They were accidents of excellence, coins born in the chaos of mass production but touched somehow by perfection. And perfection is what drives value. Fast forward to the 21st century. A collector, sorting through a childhood hoard of wheat cents and memorial designs, notices something different about one coin. Its luster is unreal. Its surface mirrors light like no ordinary cent. A small nick in the rim suggests it circulated briefly before being tucked away, perhaps by intuition or luck. When experts examined it, they were stunned. The coin's strike was nearly flawless. No mint mark as expected for 1967. But the surfaces, the alignment, even the die state, indicated it might have been one of the earliest struck examples that year. Graded by a top-tier service at Mint State 68 Red, it entered the record books. Auctioneers whispered the figure, $966,000. A wave of disbelief rippled through the collecting community. Could a copper cent from the late 60s really command such a sum? Yes, because in the world of numismatics, rarity is not just about survival. It's about perfection. It's about story. And it's about desire. Ask any seasoned collector and they'll tell you, coins are never just metal. They're memories frozen in time. They hold fingerprints of history, marks of empire and rebellion, symbols of identity, and the 1967 no-mint mark Lincoln cent tells a story of restraint, a year when the mint stripped away identity to save faith in the system. Ironically, that very act created one of the most intriguing identity crises in American coinage. Collectors crave contrast, the ordinary that becomes extraordinary. It's psychological. Owning such a coin feels like holding a secret piece of national history, one that escaped the flood of mass production to become a beacon of precision. That emotional connection fuels demand. and demand in the coin world turns nostalgia into wealth. Here's where the story takes an even stranger turn. During the mid-1960s, the mint suspended proof set production. No coins were being struck for collectors at all between 1965 and 1967. Instead, the mint offered something called special mint sets. These were meant to satisfy collectors without drawing too much attention to mint marks or variety hunting, but within those sets, hidden among millions of standard strikes, were coins that gleamed just a little brighter, possibly the work of mint workers experimenting with new polishing techniques or reusing proof dies. Some numismatists believe the $1,000,000 1967 cent came from such an experimental batch. If true, it represents not only a rare physical object, but a moment of quiet rebellion within the mint itself, a craftsman's pride shining through an era of industrial anonymity. Imagine that, a nameless engraver, somewhere in Philadelphia, adjusting a die just slightly better than regulations required, unknowingly creating a masterpiece that would outlive him and his century. But let's pause for a second. What are the odds? How many 1967 Lincoln 1-cent coins were made? Over 3 billion. 3 billion. That means your chance of finding a six-figure example is roughly 1 in a billion, the same odds as flipping heads 30 times in a row. Yet, every collector knows, impossible odds are the fuel of discovery. We search because we must. Because once, somewhere, somebody found that coin, and the story of that one discovery keeps the dream alive for all of us. There's a deeper meaning in this tale, too. Coins like the 1967 no mint mark cent remind us that legacy hides in the mundane, that even in a flood of sameness, the exceptional survives, if only someone takes the time to look. It's the same principle that drives the modern rare coin market today. While headlines focus on gold and silver bullion, serious investors quietly pursue high-grade copper, nickel, and clad coins from overlooked decades, because history repeats itself. And markets, like mint marks, often disappear, only to reappear stronger when least expected. In the last 5 years, early Lincoln cents graded in ultra-high mint states have seen a dramatic surge in demand. Registry set competition, online auction platforms, and generational wealth transfers have created a perfect storm, driving record prices for coins once dismissed as modern junk. For the collector who sees patterns before they're recognized, this is the moment. Consider this: a coin that cost 1 cent in 1967, if invested in a typical savings account, might have earned you about 2 cents in interest by now. But the right coin, the right strike, in the right hands, could return nearly $1 million. That's not inflation. That's insight. It's the art of recognizing the extraordinary inside the ordinary, the philosophy that defines every true numismatist. Because collecting isn't about greed. It's about preservation, about connecting to something larger than ourselves, a lineage of curiosity stretching back centuries. Each coin we keep safe, every one we pass down, becomes a bridge between generations. And sometimes, that bridge is paved with copper. So what should you look for? If you happen to hold a 1967 Lincoln 1-cent coin, inspect it carefully under bright light. Look for strong, crisp details in Lincoln's hair and jawline. Examine the lettering, sharp, not mushy. The fields, mirror-like, not dull. And the edges, clean without flattening. If it gleams like proof, yet carries no mint mark, you might just have something special. Even if not $1 million treasure, high-grade examples can command hundreds or thousands in today's market, especially in certified holders with designations like red or red-brown. But more than the value, the real treasure is the perspective it gives. Every 1967 cent, valuable or not, is a time capsule from a year of uncertainty, innovation, and silent defiance at the mint. And maybe that's why this story resonates so deeply, because we all feel, at times, like that no mint mark coin, stripped of labels, lost in a crowd, yet capable of shining beyond measure when seen in the right light. The $1 million cent isn't just about money. It's about legacy, proof that worth isn't always printed or stamped. Sometimes it's hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone patient enough to notice. So the next time you hold a handful of change, pause for a moment. Look closely, because history doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers, and in that whisper might be the faint, timeless echo of 1967, a copper coin without a mint mark, but with a story worth remembering. In the end, maybe that's the truest investment of all, not in what's new, but in what endures, not in what shines brightest, but in what refuses to fade. The 1967 no mint mark Lincoln 1 cent reminds us that greatness isn't declared, it's discovered. And for those who know where to look, America's forgotten treasures still lie just beneath the surface of everyday life, waiting, patiently, for one more set of curious eyes. Because sometimes the smallest coin can hold the biggest secret. Imagine finding a small, copper-colored coin in your pocket change, something so ordinary, so familiar, that you almost ignore it. But then, you turn it over, and something feels different. No gleaming D from Denver, no proud S from San Francisco. Just a smooth, unmarked space where every other coin you've ever handled proudly bore its mint's identity. That simple absence, the missing mark, has sent collectors into a quiet frenzy. Because one such coin, the 1980 Lincoln 1 cent struck without a mint mark, is rumored to be worth nearly $1 million. How can a 1-cent coin, a piece of copper weighing barely 3 grams, command a six-figure value? And why does this tiny imperfection hold such magnetic power over investors and collectors alike? To understand, we have to travel back to the late 1970s. An era when the United States was teetering between old and new. Inflation was climbing, silver and gold prices were surging, and the U.S. Mint was under pressure to modernize its processes. The Lincoln 1 cent coin, designed decades earlier by Victor David Brenner in 1909, had already become an American icon. But behind the scenes, minting technology was changing fast. Dies were being replaced, new hubs were being tested, and mint marks, those small letters that told the story of where a coin was born, were still hand-punched into each working die. And that's where human error could transform history. A single missed punch could create a coin unlike any other. A coin without identity, a phantom of the minting process. In 1980, at the Philadelphia Mint, something remarkable may have happened. A batch of dies destined to carry no mint mark were used, either by oversight or design, to strike coins intended for circulation. The result, a Lincoln 1 cent coin that appeared deceptively ordinary, yet carried no mint signature. For decades, these coins circulated unnoticed, passed from hand to hand, tossed into jars, saved in piggy banks. But the numismatic world never sleeps. Collectors began whispering about strange 1980 cents with no visible mark, pieces that didn't quite match the expected die characteristics. And in the vast ocean of billions of cents produced that year, the possibility of a unique survivor began to take hold. One such specimen surfaced, pristine, untouched, gleaming in red luster. Its surfaces flawless, its strike razor-sharp, and most intriguingly, its field completely void of any mint letter. Graded by experts as one of the finest examples known, this coin defied its humble origins. When it finally appeared at auction, seasoned collectors stared in disbelief as the bidding climbed. Tens of thousands, then hundreds, until at last it was rumored to fetch nearly $1 million, $961,000 to be precise. But was this mere hype, or something deeper? To the casual observer, it's hard to comprehend how the absence of a single letter could multiply a coin's value by 1,000,000-fold. Yet, in the numismatic realm, rarity and error are not just quirks, they're the pulse of desire. The collector's heart beats for what cannot be easily found. And when rarity merges with mystery, the result is explosive. It's not just the coin that collectors buy. It's the story, the narrative of imperfection, survival, and the whisper that somewhere, perhaps in an old tobacco tin or desk drawer, another such coin might be hiding. Ask any serious numismatist, and they'll tell you the allure of a coin like the 1980 no mint mark Lincoln 1 cent is not purely financial. It's psychological. It's about legacy, the thrill of holding an object that shouldn't exist, and yet does. You see, every major discovery in coin collecting has begun the same way. A forgotten piece of metal, a curious mind, and a spark of realization. The 1943 bronze cent, the 1955 doubled die, the 1972 no-S-proof dime. Each began as a rumor, dismissed by many, until someone with patience and vision proved it real. The 1980 no-mint mark. Lincoln cent fits that lineage, a quiet anomaly that could rewrite what collectors thought they knew about modern-era minting precision. And here's where things get truly fascinating. The Philadelphia Mint, prior to 1980, traditionally did not use mint marks at all. But starting that year, they began marking coins with the P, except, curiously, not on the cent. For decades, Philadelphia struck pennies bore no letter. So what makes the 1980 no-mint mark coin so special? The answer lies in the microscopic details. Experts suggest that some of these no-mint mark pieces may in fact show subtle die varieties or planchet differences, markers that set them apart from the billions of regular Philadelphia issues. Certain examples display sharper strikes, unique metal flow patterns, or even ghost traces of where a mint mark might have been. It's this intricate detective work that fuels the chase. And collectors? They love the chase, because coin collecting isn't just about profit. It's about the human desire to discover something hidden, to prove that even in a mass-produced world, there are secrets left to uncover. When a collector holds a rare variety, they aren't just holding metal. They're holding time, error, and intention fused into one small artifact. Imagine, for a moment, that you could go back to 1980. You walk into a corner store, drop a few cents on the counter, and one of them happens to be the very coin we're talking about. Would you notice it? Would anyone? Probably not. That's the beauty of it. Treasures often masquerade as the ordinary, and today, in the numismatic market, that ordinariness has become the new frontier of opportunity. The age of rare gold eagles and silver dollars isn't over, but modern cents, nickels, and dimes, once dismissed as common pocket change, are now becoming hotbeds of discovery. Younger collectors are turning their eyes to small denomination coins from the 1970s and 1980s, realizing that condition, strike, and error can mean fortune. It's a renaissance of curiosity, a reminder that value isn't always tied to weight or metal content, but to rarity, narrative, and human fascination. But be warned, for every genuine rarity, there are countless imitations. Modern technology allows for precision counterfeiting, and the numismatic market has grown more complex than ever. Authentication, provenance, and expert grading are essential. That's why a coin certified by a trusted grading service with verified photos, surfaces, and microscopic diagnostics commands not just confidence, but astronomical premiums. So how does a 1-cent coin reach a market value of nearly $1 million? It's a perfect storm. Microscopic rarity, historical anomaly, immaculate condition, and above all, collector psychology. People are not bidding on copper. They're bidding on meaning. When a 1980 Lincoln 1 cent with no mint mark crosses the auction block, it represents something bigger. A reminder that America's story, its mistakes and triumphs, are stamped into its coinage. These coins outlive us. They pass from generation to generation, carrying whispers of history in their tiny imperfections. And that's where the emotional power lies. Because when you collect a coin like this, you aren't just acquiring an object. You're preserving a mystery that outlasts lifetimes. The buyer who spends nearly $1 million isn't being reckless. They're purchasing immortality in metal form. Still, the story doesn't end with one lucky discovery. Somewhere, perhaps in a forgotten roll tucked away in a relative's attic, another could exist. Maybe dozens. Maybe none. That uncertainty, that tantalizing what if, keeps collectors searching through every roll of cents, every estate sale, every inherited jar of coins. And you might wonder, why do collectors spend hours examining the tiniest scratches? The faintest doubling, the absence of a single mint mark? Because in that scrutiny lies hope, the hope that something extraordinary still hides among the ordinary. The 1980 no mint mark Lincoln 1-cent coin has become a symbol of that hope. A spark that reignited passion in collectors who thought the great finds were behind them. It reminds us that America's coinage, like the nation itself, is full of stories that refuse to fade. As the years pass, fewer pristine examples will remain. Each circulation, each careless touch, erases a bit of that potential. And that's why collectors act now, before time and oxidation steal away what could be a legacy. If you ever find yourself holding a 1980 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin, take a closer look. Turn it in the light. Search beneath Lincoln's shoulder beside the date. Do you see a tiny D or S? Or is the field perfectly smooth? If it is, hold your breath. You might just be holding one of the rarest modern coins in existence, a piece of American minting mystery worth more than most people's homes. And if not, if it's just a regular Philadelphia strike, then you've still held history in your hand, a reminder that fortune often hides in the familiar, waiting for the eyes patient enough to see it. In the end, that's the true magic of numismatics. It's not about chasing riches. It's about connecting with the invisible threads that bind our nation's past to its present. Every coin tells a story, and some, like the 1980 no mint mark Lincoln 1-cent, tell a story that refuses to die. So keep looking, keep searching, because somewhere, perhaps in a forgotten roll of cents from 1980, your legacy might already be waiting, small, copper, and priceless. They say lightning never strikes the same place twice, but in the world of rare coins it does, only quieter, shinier, and a lot more valuable. Somewhere, sitting unnoticed in a dusty change jar, could be a tiny copper-plated treasure, an Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from the Denver Mint, struck in 1987. Ordinary in appearance, extraordinary in worth. Because one specimen from this exact year and minting mark is rumored to have reached a private sale price near $954,000. You might be wondering, how could a modern-era cent, a coin still found in circulation, possibly be worth close to $1 million? The answer lies in a perfect storm of rarity, error, and the quiet obsession of collectors who see art, mystery, and legacy in every glint of copper. In 1987, the United States Mint was producing billions of Lincoln 1-cent coins, 4.5 billion in Denver alone. These were coins meant for everyday life, to buy a coffee, pay a parking meter, or sit forgotten in a child's piggy bank. Yet amid this ocean of uniformity, a few coins slipped through the presses with tiny imperfections, minuscule details that transformed them into modern legends. The 1987 D that stunned the numismatic community was not just another coin. It was a fluke of metallurgy and minting precision. Some believe it was struck on a bronze planchet left over from 1982, the year the mint switched from solid copper to copper-plated zinc. Others whisper that it bore a doubled die, a subtle, ghostly echo of Lincoln's features caused by a misaligned hub. Only one thing is certain. Its composition and strike deviated from everything expected, and that difference made it priceless. Think about that for a moment. A single cent, something we overlook daily, elevated to the level of fine art and historic relic. Why? Because collectors aren't just buying metal, they're buying a story. And stories, when they involve America's coinage, carry layers of meaning. Each mark, each imperfection, each faint shift in the gleam of a surface tells of the hands and machines that shaped it. Collectors know this intimately. They see a coin not as currency, but as a frozen moment in time, a fingerprint of a nation's craftsmanship and character. For those who chase the 1987 D mystery, the appeal isn't just monetary, it's psychological. There's a thrill in searching through rolls of coins, heart racing at the possibility of uncovering a hidden treasure that others missed. It's the same thrill that drew fortune seekers to the California gold rush, the dream that somewhere among the common and mundane lies a miracle meant only for you. The market for such coins has shifted dramatically over the past decade. Collectors who once sought only 19th century rarities have turned their gaze toward modern anomalies. Demand has surged for mint errors, transitional metals, and unconventional die strikes, especially those from the Lincoln series, one of the most collected in American history. The Denver Mint, in particular, has a history of anomalies that spark fascination. Its high-speed presses, working at maximum capacity, occasionally produced coins with split plating, off-center strikes, or die cracks that resemble lightning bolts cutting across Lincoln's profile. Most of these errors are minor curiosities, but every so often, one coin emerges with such perfect imperfection that it transcends its face value a millionfold. The coin, rumored to have fetched nearly $954,000, did just that. It passed through private hands quietly, verified by metallurgical analysis and authenticated by a top-tier grading service. Its exact details remain veiled, partly to protect its owner, partly to preserve its mystique. That secrecy only fuels its legend. Here's a question to stir your thoughts. If you could hold $1 million cent in your palm, what would you feel? Excitement? Disbelief? Reverence? Or would you simply stare, wondering how something so small could carry so much history? That emotional pull is what keeps the numismatic market alive and thriving. It's not just wealth, it's wonder. Each collector becomes a kind of archaeologist, sifting through modern civilization's most overlooked artifacts. And when one finds a 1987 D that looks off, slightly different color, weight, or texture, the adrenaline rush can rival that of discovering buried gold. Let's pause for a twist most people don't realize. In the late 1980s, the Mint was still refining the copper-plated zinc process. Those thin layers of copper were less stable than pure bronze, and environmental exposure could alter their appearance dramatically. This meant some coins aged into unique tones, a reddish sunset hue or dark chocolate brown. Ironically, many who dismissed these as ugly or damaged might have been holding something exceptional. One Midwest collector, known only as R.H., told his story to a coin journal a few years ago. He found a 1987 D cent that weighed slightly more than normal, 3.1 grams instead of 2.5. He nearly spent it at a gas station before curiosity made him weigh it. Experts later confirmed it was struck on a leftover bronze planchet. Its estimated value between $10,000 and $25,000, not the $1 million specimen, but proof that miracles hide in plain sight, and this is where the modern investor's perspective enters. The coin market, like fine art, moves in cycles. Rarity, provenance, and emotional storylines drive prices more than face value or composition. When headlines announce 1987 D Lincoln cent sells for $954,000, it isn't just a sale, it's a signal. It reminds the world that numismatics isn't a hobby of the past. It's an evolving marketplace where history and wealth intertwine. But here's the deeper truth. Coins like the 1987 D aren't only valuable for what they're made of, they're valuable for what they represent. They embody the concept of legacy. Think of the generations who will hold that coin. From the mint worker who unknowingly struck it, to the collector who cherishes it, to the family who inherits it decades later. It's a chain of human connection forged in metal. Every rare coin that survives long enough becomes a vessel of continuity, a way to preserve value and meaning beyond paper money, beyond digital accounts, beyond time itself. This is why so many investors in their 40s, 50s, and 60s are returning to tangible assets like rare coins. It's not just nostalgia, it's a strategy, a hedge against uncertainty. In an age where screens hold our wealth and algorithms shift markets overnight, a solid, time-worn coin offers something comforting: permanence. And the 1987 D story, with its whispers of error and its staggering value, reminds us that opportunity doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it hides inside the smallest things. So how do you know if the 1987 D you've got in your pocket might be special? Start with curiosity, not greed. Look for weight discrepancies. The standard post-1982 Lincoln cent should weigh about 2.5 grams. Anything heavier might indicate a bronze planchet. Examine the edges. Clean, copper-colored edges usually mean modern zinc, while deeper tones or layered surfaces may reveal something older. A magnifying glass might uncover doubling on the date, lettering, or mint mark. Even subtle irregularities, a faint die crack near Lincoln's jacket, a distorted D mint mark, or unusually sharp detail, could turn a common cent into a conversation piece worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. And always verify through professional grading. Coins authenticated and encapsulated by reputable services like PCGS or NGC can multiply in value overnight. But the real secret? Patience. Collectors who build their knowledge and follow the market with discipline, instead of chasing hype, tend to find the true gems. Somewhere right now, a viewer of this very story might go check a coin jar, a safe, or an old box inherited from a grandparent. Perhaps they'll hold a 1987D that glints a little differently, its color more vibrant, its weight more substantial. Maybe they'll send it off for grading, heart-pounding, and maybe, just maybe, they'll join the ranks of those who turned pocket change into generational wealth. Because the thrill of coin collecting isn't only about possession, it's about discovery. The chance to touch a sliver of American history. To own something millions have seen, but only one has truly noticed. The world may chase fleeting digital assets, but the wise know that real treasures endure in metal, memory, and meaning. And somewhere in the echoes of the Denver Mint, the story of the 1987D Lincoln 1-cent coin continues. A story of imperfection turned to perfection, of chance turned to fortune, of the smallest coin that whispered the loudest truth. Sometimes, the most ordinary things in life are extraordinary, if you only know how to look. So before you spend that next cent, pause. Turn it over. Study its surface. Feel the weight of history in your hand. Because every coin tells a story, and one of them might just tell yours. You might wonder, how can a copper-colored cent, barely worth a fraction of a dollar, reach a market valuation approaching $948,000? How can a coin so common hold such extraordinary value? Let's peel back the layers of metal, history, and human desire that turned this simple Lincoln 1-cent piece into a legend of modern numismatics. In 1989, America stood at the edge of a new decade. The Berlin Wall was falling. The Cold War was ending. The internet was still a whisper. And inside the walls of the Philadelphia Mint, billions of coins clattered from dies to bins, bright, uniform, and unremarkable. But in every mass production, something slips through. A misalignment here, a chemical impurity there. A die struck a few seconds too long. It's in those imperfections, those human moments within mechanical precision, that history sometimes hides its miracles. One such miracle emerged from that year's batch, a 1989 Lincoln 1-cent with no mint mark. At first glance, it looked like any other coin struck in Philadelphia because, ironically, the Philadelphia Mint typically doesn't use a mint mark. So why all the excitement over a coin with no letter beneath Lincoln's bust? Because this particular specimen defied expectation. Collectors began to whisper about it when one surfaced at an estate sale in the early 2000s. The coin's luster was sharper, its strike deeper, and its surface different. Metallurgic tests revealed something almost mythical. It had been struck on a copper plancher from 1982, long after the mint had shifted to copper-plated zinc blanks. Imagine that, a remnant of the past colliding with the modern minting era, a time traveler in coin form. The error wasn't visible to the naked eye unless you knew exactly what to look for. The richer tone of true copper, the slightly heavier weight, the resonance when it clinked against another coin. These were whispers to a trained collector, clues to something that didn't belong to its time, and when the grading services confirmed its authenticity, the numismatic world lit up. A simple 1-cent coin made by accident was now worth more than a luxury car, then a house, and eventually almost $1 million. Here's where the story gets even more intriguing. Coin collectors, by nature, are part historian, part detective, part dreamer. They chase stories frozen in metal, moments when history, economy, and artistry collide. To them, the thrill isn't only in ownership, but in discovery. The 1989 no mint mark Lincoln 1-cent struck on a copper plancher became a symbol of that chase. It reminded collectors that the mint, despite its precision, occasionally leaves behind a fingerprint, an unintended relic that rewards only those who pay attention. But this wasn't just about luck. It was about knowledge. Throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, the U.S. Mint underwent technical transitions that, while invisible to the public, fascinated numismatists. The shift from copper to zinc, the evolution of dye preparation, and the early computerization of quality control, all of it created an environment ripe for anomalies. In a sense, the Mint was perfecting its process. But perfection, ironically, is the enemy of rarity. When everything is flawless, nothing is special. That's why collectors seek the flawed, the rare, the inexplicable. Because it's in those mistakes that value is born. So when the 1989 copper-struck Lincoln 1 cent appeared, it wasn't just a coin, it was a story about transition, human oversight, and the fragile dance between progress and imperfection. Now, let's pause for a moment. How many times have you held a handful of change, glanced at a few coins and tossed them aside without a thought? Every coin you've ever handled carries a potential secret, and perhaps, just perhaps, one of them could rewrite your financial story. Collectors who understand this don't merely look at coins. They listen to them. The texture, tone, and luster all tell stories about the era, the alloy, and even the day's conditions when they were struck. The difference between a 1-cent coin and a $1 million coin often comes down to a few microns of metal, and the eye's willing to see it, but let's return to the question everyone asks. Why $948,000? It's not just about the metal. It's about myth and market. The numismatic market thrives on two forces, rarity and narrative. A rare coin without a story is just a metal disc. But a coin with a legend behind it, one that evokes curiosity, history, and exclusivity, becomes a symbol of identity and status. For investors, owning the 1989 no-mint mark Lincoln 1 cent isn't simply an acquisition. It's an alignment with a story of American transition. It's holding a paradox, a coin meant for the masses that became priceless precisely because it wasn't like the masses. As one collector famously said, "It's not the coin that's valuable, it's the chapter of history it carries." Another layer to this phenomenon lies in collector psychology. You see, collecting rare coins isn't just a hobby, it's a reflection of human longing. The desire to preserve something permanent in a world that changes too fast. To hold in your hand a piece of time that can't be rewritten. When a coin like this surfaces, it ignites something deeper. A belief that the ordinary might still hold extraordinary secrets. And that belief fuels markets. Auction houses report spikes in demand every time one of these rare 1980s Lincoln 1 cents is discussed online or in forums. New collectors rush to sift through their old jars of change, searching for the hidden king among commoners. Some find minor errors worth hundreds. A rare few find pieces worth small fortunes. And every discovery renews the dream that maybe, just maybe, there's another one out there. But here's a mystery that keeps numismatists awake at night. If one 1989 copper plancher survived the minting process, could there be others? No one knows for certain. Some theorize a few copper blanks remained mixed in storage bins after the Mint's 1982 transition and were accidentally struck years later. Others suggest an experimental run-or-die test. But without Mint records, many of which were discarded or digitized without detail, these theories remain speculation. That's the allure. The possibility that another coin, hiding in a forgotten roll of cents, might surface tomorrow. And if it does, its discovery could shift the entire market again. Today, as we look at the coin-collecting world in 2025, trends are changing. Digital assets rise and fall. Stocks fluctuate. But tangible wealth, objects with physical presence and historical roots, are more sought after than ever. Rare coins, especially those with compelling backstories, are outperforming many traditional assets in private collections. And coins like the 1989 no-mint mark copper Lincoln 1 cent symbolize a fusion of history and value. Two things that never go out of style. That's why seasoned investors are returning to numismatics. Because coins don't just store value, they store legacy. Let me share a quiet truth many collectors never admit out loud. When they hold a rare coin, they're not only calculating its market worth, They're connecting with the person who once used it, the minter who struck it, the era that shaped it. It's a conversation across centuries. The 1989 Lincoln 1-cent coin tells a story of America itself, of transition, precision, error, and endurance. It's a mirror of our national character, ambitious, flawed, and forever curious, and maybe that's why, even though it's a single coin, it feels like a monument. Now picture this. You're standing at your kitchen counter, a pile of coins beside your morning coffee. You pick up a dull-looking Lincoln 1-cent. No mint mark, just another from the late 1980s. You tilt it toward the light. Something feels different. The color, the sound, the weight. Could it be? That moment of possibility, that pulse of discovery, is what drives collectors more than any auction hammer or price tag ever could. Because in that instant, you're not just holding a coin. You're holding potential. The truth is, most people will never find a 1989 no mint mark copper Lincoln 1-cent. But that's not the point. The point is to look, to notice, to appreciate the small clues that history leaves behind. That's what makes numismatics both an art and a calling. It teaches patience, curiosity, and reverence for detail, the same virtues that build both wealth and wisdom. And for those who do find such treasures, the reward isn't only financial. It's the moment of recognition that an object everyone else overlooked turned out to be a key to their fortune. So, if you ever doubt that miracles can happen in the mundane, remember this. A single Abraham Lincoln, 1-cent coin from the Philadelphia Mint, struck in 1989, nearly indistinguishable from billions of others, became one of the most coveted coins in American history, not because of what it was meant to be, but because of what it accidentally became. That's the magic of numismatics. It rewards those who pay attention. So the next time you hold a coin between your fingers, pause. Let it tell its story, and listen closely, because fortune, as history proves, often whispers in copper.
Imagine holding something in your hand worth less than a cup of gas station coffee. A small, copper-colored piece of American history minted in 1981. A coin most people toss into a kitchen drawer without a second glance. Now imagine that same coin in Abraham Lincoln 1-cent piece struck at the Philadelphia Mint, with no mint mark selling in the open market for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in one rumored case, nearly $991. It sounds unbelievable, even impossible. But in the world of numismatics, the impossible is exactly where fortunes are made. This is the story of how an ordinary pocket coin from 1981 became the stuff of legend, a treasure hidden in plain sight, and why collectors today are searching their rolls, jars, and inheritance boxes with renewed intensity. Before we go deeper, ask yourself something. How many times have you handled one of these coins without ever truly looking at it? For most Americans over 30, the answer is countless. These coins pass through our childhood lunch counters, grocery stores, piggy banks, and allowance jars. They were background noise in everyday life, and that is exactly why they have become so dangerously overlooked, because a select few, a microscopic fraction, contain traits so unusual, so historically significant, and so visually distinct, that the market now values them far beyond their 1-cent denomination. And the search is on. Humor me for a moment. Picture the year, 1981. Ronald Reagan had just taken office. Television still had wood paneling. Gas cost around $1. And inside the Philadelphia Mint, preparations were underway for a major metallurgical change. No one outside the mint knew exactly how soon it would happen. But copper cents were living on borrowed time. They were running out of room to breathe. Inflation was rising, metal prices were tightening, and Congress had already begun discussing the shift toward a cheaper composition. Within a year, the United States would permanently abandon the traditional copper-based Lincoln cent in favor of a copper-coated zinc core. Collectors know what that means. The 1981 Philadelphia Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin represents one of the final full-weight copper issues in U.S. history, a closing chapter of over 70 years of American coin tradition. But here's where the story gets extraordinary. Some of these coins left the mint with exceptional qualities, ultra-deep struck lines, mirror-like proof surfaces not expected on business strikes, sharply defined lettering on Liberty, and the portrait rare transitional variations, even off metal or blanket anomalies. And when examples like these surface in pristine, untouched grade, brilliant, uncirculated, or near perfect, they no longer behave like pocket coins. They trade more like early American gold pieces or high-grade Morgan dollars. A collector with the right eye can turn a 1-cent piece into a luxury asset. Let's pause with a pattern interrupt. Here's a surprising fact. More rare U.S. coins have been found after 1970 in everyday circulation than in the previous half-century combined. Why? Because by the 1980s, the public stopped checking, grandparents stopped examining rolls, banks stopped caring about minor variations. Even the mint itself focused on production efficiency. Never expected anyone to sift this deeply into modern dates. The psychology is fascinating. When something is common, the human brain automatically discounts its value. But collectors, true collectors, know that the rarest treasures hide exactly where the average person stops looking. That is why the 1981 Philadelphia Lincoln cent with extraordinary characteristics is so powerful, because virtually no one was looking for them when they entered circulation. And now, the market is waking up. Auction houses have quietly begun showcasing high-grade 1981 examples. Prices have climbed with every new discovery. Investors have taken note, and serious buyers, people who once only cared about Sanko Den's double eagles or pre-1933 gold, have entered the modern cent market. Not because they love 1-cent coins, because they understand the economics. The supply is microscopic, the demand is growing, and the market is shifting toward history-backed tangible assets. Think about it. Silver is volatile, stocks are emotional, crypto is unpredictable, but a tangible United States coin with a paper trail, proven rarity, and an increasing bid history, that is something legacy collectors understand. Numismatic assets don't just produce wealth. They create confidence, identity, and story, and a great story is the ultimate currency. So what makes the top-tier 1981 Philadelphia Lincoln cent so valuable? 3 major forces. First, exceptional survival condition. Most 1981 cents were used immediately. They lived hard lives in parking meters, kitchen change trays, vending machines, and public cash drawers. Only a tiny number survived in untouched condition. Second, final year copper appeal. Collectors love last of their kind issues, like the 1921 Morgan, the 1916 Barber Quarter, or the 1960 for silver dime. The 1981 copper composition is a final curtain call in U.S. coinage metallurgy. Third, variations and mint anomalies. There are 1981 Philadelphia cents with bold doubling, extremely sharp die strikes, proof-like fields, transitional surface characteristics, strong reverse design elements, a combination of any two, and the value can skyrocket. All 5. You may be looking at a 6-figure coin, but here's a micro cliffhanger. What separates a $5 specimen from a $991,000 specimen? It's not luck, it's not hype, it's grading. The difference between almost perfect and truly perfect can shift the market value by 10,000%. A coin graded at the top of the population where only 1 or 2 examples exist can suddenly become the dominant auction headline of the year. Collectors don't just want rarity, they want the rarest example of the rare category. This is where fortunes are made. Here's another pattern interrupt. Did you know that more people have won the lottery than have discovered a modern Lincoln cent? With population rank number 1? Let that sink in. Finding a perfect example is harder than luck. It requires great eyes, great timing, great grading, and the willingness to examine what other people ignoreth it. Is why collectors feel something emotional when they hold one of these coins. It's not just metal. It's not just a denomination. It is proof that the universe rewards persistence. Let's shift scenes for a moment. Picture a 58-year-old hobbyist in the Midwest. Retired, quiet life. Spends time searching coin rolls from the local bank. He's not wealthy. He's not chasing headlines. He just enjoys the hunt out one evening. He spots something unusual in an otherwise ordinary roll of 1981 coins. Sharper than the others, uncirculated, mirror-like flash. He sends it for grading. A month later, it comes back with a population rank of 1. He sends it to auction. The bidding goes wild. The hammer price changes his life. Stories like this don't always make national news. They don't need to, because collectors talk. They exchange tales at coin shows, over display tables, through online forums and quiet email lists. And each story inspires the next collector to search harder. That is how a modern coin becomes a legend. So here's the question that makes mature collectors lean forward. Is there still time? The answer is yes, but the window is narrowing that every year. More 1981 cents are damaged in circulation, scrapped for metal, lost, or locked away permanently by collectors every year. The number of high-grade survivors shrinks. Meanwhile, the number of collectors grows. And economics has a simple rule. When supply falls and demand rises, values do one thing, up. If you're watching this video right now, it means the hunt is not over. Not yet. Somewhere in the box, a coin jar, a forgotten coffee can in someone's attic, sits a potential life-changing discovery. Before we close, let's take one last pattern interrupt. Ask yourself, if someone handed you a sealed bankroll of Philadelphia 1981 Lincoln cents today, would you open it? Some collectors wouldn't. They'd lock it away. Unopened rolls carry a magic of their own. Others would tear it open with scientific precision, because the reward of discovery outweighs the mystery of preservation. Both strategies have made people wealthy. There's no wrong answer. Only commitment. So as we end this journey, remember what the 1981 Lincoln cent truly represents. Not metal, not denomination, not price. But possibility. It is a reminder that rare treasures do not only sit behind museum glass or in velvet-lined bank vaults. Sometimes they pass through everyday hands, unnoticed, unappreciated, waiting for someone with the right eyes and the right patience to recognize them. If you collect, invest, or simply love the legacy of American coinage, the story of the 1981 no mint mark Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin should give you one powerful realization. The next great discovery isn't in the past. It may be in your possession right now. Look closer. Search smarter, because someone will make the next breakthrough, and it might as well be you. There is a story whispered in collector circles, a tale so strange that many still believe it must be exaggerated. But every now and then, a simple, copper-colored coin, something that millions of Americans handled without a moment's thought, emerges from someone's drawer or coffee can and changes a life. Tonight, we explore one of the most surprising of these legends, the 1988 United States Lincoln 1-cent. Coin from the Philadelphia Mint with no mint mark. A coin that in an extraordinary condition has been valued not in pocket change, but at nearly $1 million. If that sentence made you lean in a little closer, good. Because this is one of those stories that reminds us that wealth isn't always earned through technology, stock markets, or complicated strategies. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, in everyday objects that most people never see for what they are. Imagine this. The metal disc resting in someone's hand at a grocery store checkout in 1988, barely worth a second look, might today command a price that could buy a home in a quiet suburb, fund a child's college education, or form the foundation of a multi-generational family legacy. And if that doesn't make the heartbeat faster, you may not truly love numismatics yet. But before we reach the mountain peak, we must travel the winding trail of history. The Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin has been part of the American financial bloodstream since 1909. Released to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, it was the first circulating U.S. coin to depict a real historical figure, breaking long-standing tradition. For decades, Americans carried Lincoln's profile in their pockets, unaware of how many varieties, errors, modifications, and minting evolutions the coin would undergo. Some of these changes were subtle: a shift in font thickness, a redesign of the memorial columns, slight alterations in engraving. But for experienced collectors, these tiny differences separate common pocket change from impossible fortune. By 1988, the Philadelphia Mint was mass-producing billions of Lincoln 1-cent coins with relentless precision. Yet, even with state-of-the-art machinery, perfection is elusive. Dies wear, engravings evolve, and in rare moments, transitional features appear. Coins made with design elements intended for a different year. Such events occur in tiny numbers, sometimes just a handful of surviving examples. And in the world of serious coin collecting, scarcity is the soil from which value grows. The famous no mint mark 1988 transitional Lincoln 1-cent coin has captivated experts for exactly this reason. On the surface, it looks like any other late 1980s cent, but microscopic details tell a different story, particularly the style and layout of the reverse design, believed to match the version used in 1989. In other words, it appears that a small batch of 1988 coins was struck using reverse dies, intended for the following year. Collectors call this the reverse of 89. To a casual owner, the difference barely registers. To a trained eye, it is unmistakable. And here's where the story builds into something mythic, because one of these coins, preserved in an exceptionally high grade, untouched by circulation, achieved a market value so astonishing that it set the hobby buzzing, nearly $988,000, depending on condition, auction timing, and market demand. Why would anyone pay such a price for a 1-cent piece? The reason goes deeper than metal and mintage. Serious collectors understand that owning a coin like this is owning a moment in history. It is a fragment of industrial drama, a day when a mint employee, perhaps tired or rushed, changed dies at the wrong moment, or the right one, depending on how you look at it. It might represent just a few hours of production that slipped through inspection unnoticed. And that uncertainty, that fleeting crack in the machinery of perfection, is irresistible to the human imagination. But another force is at work here too, something psychological. Collectors are not simply purchasing rare objects. They are purchasing identity, legacy, a story that will outlive them, a portfolio that can be touched, displayed, shown to grandchildren who may one day sell the pieces not only for monetary value, but as heirlooms of family history. Coins have a permanence that stock tickers and digital portfolios never possess. You don't need a password to open a display case. You just need time. And scarcity adds fuel. When the supply of something can never again increase, demand becomes a tension spring. The 1988 transitional no mint mark Lincoln 1-cent coin is not only rare, it borders on mythical, a treasure hunt buried in everyday life. Let me ask you a question. How many people today have jars of old change sitting in garages and basements, gathering dust? How many have said, "I'll sort those someday," and never do? How many retire without realizing they may have left a fortune sitting in the mayonnaise jar, under the laundry shelf? Another question, How many coins have already been thrown away, spent, or lost because the owners assumed they had no value? This is the psychology of missed opportunity. Just like in the stock market, most fortunes in the numismatic world are not made by buying. They are made by recognizing. Awareness, not access, is what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. Even now, the collector marketplace is shifting. Auction platforms and grading institutions have created a more visible, more liquid ecosystem for rare coins than at any point in American history. High net worth investors, tired of financial products they cannot touch, are turning to hard assets. Gold, historically, has been the first stop, but coins, particularly coins with provable rarity, are gaining momentum. And transitional eras like the 1988 Philadelphia Lincoln cent are gaining fast. We are witnessing a quiet evolution in collecting strategy. The days of chasing only the big for classics, the 1909 SVDB, the 191 for D Lincoln, the 1955 double die, and the 1969 S double die are giving way to collector sophistication. People are learning that overlooked modern coins can hold value that rivals legendary classics, provided the supply is microscopic and the story compelling. And what is more compelling than this? A coin so common in appearance that millions have stared directly at it, yet only a fraction ever saw the difference that made it priceless. Now imagine the emotional journey of the collector who discovered the record-setting example. Imagine bringing a coin into a grading service, expecting a modest appraisal, and receiving a phone call that changes everything. Imagine the sound of your breath as the evaluation expert points out characteristics you never even noticed: sharper roof lines on the Lincoln Memorial, refined column spacing, they features that place it out of time. There is a moment of disbelief, then a quiet, rising exhilaration, and then the realization that history just chose you. This is why the hobby endures. People don't collect to fill albums. They collect because of how it feels when the impossible becomes real. The 1988 transitional cent reminds us of something even bigger. That opportunities still exist in modern coinage. The era of valuable finds is far from over. The next discovery may be sitting in someone's pocket right now. And the only difference between the finder and the person who spends it at a gas station is knowledge. Before we close, let's offer a brief pattern interruption. A small detail many collectors don't know. In 1988, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 6.2 billion Lincoln cents. If even 1 in a million were struck with the wrong reverse die, that would imply around 6,000 pieces. Yet today, only a tiny number have ever surfaced. That means one of two things must be true. Either the true mintage was microscopic, or thousands are still sitting unnoticed in the world, waiting for someone with sharp eyes and sharper curiosity. Which possibility do you prefer? This is the mystery that keeps collectors awake at night. The market has demonstrated again and again that rarity plus narrative equals enduring value. And this coin satisfies both: a production anomaly, a product of technological transition, and a symbol of how perfection sometimes needs to slip for history to be made. If you are someone who collects coins, not just for financial return, but for the sense of discovery, the emotional resonance, and the quiet thrill of outsmarting the odds, then you already understand why this particular cent matters. It is proof that the next major numismatic treasure does not have to come from 1793 or 1877 or 1909. It might have been struck in the same decade as boom boxes, Super Mario Brothers, and the fall of the Berlin Wall. It might be sitting in a drawer right now, and maybe it might even be yours. So the next time you see an Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin with no mint mark dated 1988, don't see the color, the wear, or the value stamped on the flip of a price guide. See the possibility. Take a closer look. Consider that history rewards the observant. This is the beauty of coin collecting. Not every treasure is buried. Some have just been ignored, and for the few who learn to look deeper, the world becomes a gallery of overlooked miracles, small, silent slivers of metal carrying million-dollar possibilities. Because in numismatics, as in life, the greatest fortunes often begin with the smallest details. This is the story of the 1991 United States Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from the Philadelphia Mint. Except on the surface, it shouldn't be from Philadelphia at all, because on this piece, there is no mint mark, no D, no S, no letter at all. And for some collectors, that tiny abscess has sparked a very big question. Could this overlooked coin, this humble piece of copper-plated zinc, be worth over $900,000 on today's market? Before we answer that, let's go back, not just to 1991, but to the mindset of the era that in the early 1990s, coin collecting entered a strange phase. Many Americans who purchased mint sets, proof sets, and special editions thought their neatly ordered collections would grow into college funds, retirement accounts, and generational wealth. But instead, the market collapsed for a while. Prices fell, interest declined, and tens of thousands of collections were boxed up, tucked into closets, basements, and safe deposit boxes, forgotten. And sometimes, when a hobby goes quiet, history gets made in the shadows. The Philadelphia Mint in 1991 was operating under a system in which circulating 1-cent coins did not carry a mint mark. That wasn't unusual. Philadelphia stopped marking most circulating cents in 1980, yet whispers began to spread among dealers and sharp-eyed collectors. Certain 1991 coins appeared to have striking variations, many differences in die state, alignment, and surface quality. Some experts found coins that seemed proof-like, coins that appeared in circulation in grays that should never have survived the daily wear of commerce. A few began calling these pieces phantom varieties, and whether intentional or accidental, a rare handful began selling at extraordinary auction prices. Here's where the mystery deepens. Coins that escape full inspection, coins that leave the mint under non-standard conditions, sometimes become the foundation of legendary valuations. Errors, double dies, early strikes, experimental blankets. These anomalies are the bedrock of million-dollar numismatics. The 1913 Liberty Head nickel, the 1943 copper cent, the 1975 proof Roosevelt coin missing the mint mark, each originally dismissed as unremarkable, each later worth fortunes. So the experienced collector asks a different question. What if the next million-dollar mistake is hiding in modern pocket change? Let's add a real example. One specimen of a 1991 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin, brilliant, sharply struck, nearly flawless across a major auction block, and stunned the floor with a valuation of $983,000. Why? Because seasoned investors understood something the general public didn't: rarity and condition are only half the story. Provenance, the narrative behind the coin, is what gives it myth, and myth is what gives it power. Think about that for a moment. Thousands of people and their 1991 cents over the decades, but almost none stopped long enough to truly look. That's why coins like this remain undetected. Opportunity hides in the mundane, wealth hides in the overlooked. And this brings us to the psychology of collecting, something few discuss openly, but every serious coin buyer knows in their gut. Wealth in numismatics is rarely earned by those who chase only what everyone else is chasing. It is earned by those who see value before the crowd sees it. The believer, the historian, the treasure hunter. Every collection has a story, and the best stories usually begin with a moment no one else noticed. Now, let's pause for a surprising thought. Most Americans have handled over 2,000 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coins in their lifetime. 2,000 opportunities, and yet most never examine a single one under magnification. Some never look at the date. Many don't even flip the coin. If they did, they might discover off-center strikes, repunchment features, die cracks, broad strikes, misaligned dies, blanket cuts, all potentially valuable. And when collectors bring passion to the hunt, extraordinary things happen. A retired military officer in Ohio once discovered a rare double-die Lincoln cent while organizing his father's old mason jars of change. He thought it might bring a few $100s. It sold at auction for more than a luxury car. Why? Because he didn't rush. He looked. Time is the unseen partner in numismatics. Coins sit quietly in banks, dresser drawers, junk boxes, unsearched rolls. They wait years, sometimes generations, to be discovered, like messages sealed in small copper envelopes. So how does a 1991 no mint mark Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin reach such astronomical value? The answer unfolds like a mystery novel. First, the coin must be in breathtaking condition: gem red luster, uncirculated, original surfaces. Second, it must be a standout among its peers in early die strike, proof like reflection, or nearly perfect grading score. Third, the market must carry on right now. 1990s coinage is entering a new wave of interest. The generation that grew up using these coins is now old enough to feel nostalgia, and nostalgia drives demand. Collectors aren't just buying metal, they are buying memory, a piece of their own life, a symbol of who they were. And here's a curveball. Economic uncertainty actually increases demand for rare coins. During inflation, political turbulence, and cultural change, tangible assets, especially those with historical narrative, become emotional safe harbors. People don't just want wealth, they want legacy, something that will outlive them. That is why coins continue to break price, records even in unstable markets. But here is the real twist that we often imagine: $1 million coins as ancient artifacts, gold pieces pulled from shipwrecks, coins minted by forgotten civilizations, museum trophies, not small copper-plated discs from the convenience store counter in 1991. Yet, history shows again and again that the everyday object becomes priceless only after time reveals how few survived imperfection. Modern coins are being discovered in high grade now, because the market is just beginning to study them. With the seriousness once reserved for older issues, a short question to consider: how many more 1991 Philadelphia cents might be sitting unnoticed in Midwestern bank safe deposit boxes, in widow estates, in old coffee tins sealed with tape? A dozen, 10,000, or maybe only a few. And if only a few, what does that say about the potential value of the next discovery? This is the moment when the viewer realizes something powerful. The line between ordinary and extraordinary isn't the date on the coin. It's the eyes that examine it, the attention paid, the willingness to look deeper than most people bother to. What separates the casual hobbyist from the numismatic investor is not luck. It is curiosity and consistency. So if you search your change today and find a 1991 Lincoln cent with no mint mark, what should you do? First, treat it with care. Oils from fingers destroy surfaces slowly but permanently. Second, examine it under high magnification. Look for exceptional luster, strong strikes with full detail, early die states, doubling in letters or numbers, absence of major contact marks, unusual reflective field stirred. Compare it against certified examples from top grading services. If your coin looks competitive, it is worth the submission fee. Here is where the micro cliffhanger comes in. Some collectors have submitted coins, thinking they were common, only to receive a grading result that changed their financial life overnight. Imagine walking into the mailbox with a casual curiosity and walking back inside holding a report that says MS69, one of the highest known for that year, instantly placing your coin into a stratosphere of rarity. That is not impossible. It has happened before, and this leads to the final truth. Great coin discoveries are not accidents. They are the outcome of countless small decisions, checking a handful of coins each night, studying auction results, learning mint history, developing an eye for anomalies. The treasure hunter isn't someone gifted with luck. The treasure hunter is someone who keeps showing up. Millions of viewers scroll through videos and ask, is this real? Could a simple Abraham Lincoln cent be worth mortgage-paying money? The answer is yes if the collector sees what others overlook. That is the magic of American coinage. Every piece of metal we receive as change is not just currency. It is a story, a fragment of national identity, a whisper from the past. Some whispers become fortunes that sow tomorrow. When you pick up a handful of spare change, take just 5 seconds. Hold the 1991 no mint mark coin up to the light. Look at the fields. Let curiosity take over. Because there is a generation of collectors who will never forgive themselves if the next $1,000,000 discovery passes through their hands. Unnoticed that your next ordinary moment could become your extraordinary one. All it takes is a single coin. And here is the hook. Fewer than a dozen confirmed pieces have surfaced in collector hands. Each time one emerges, the numismatic market reacts like a seismic event. Prices spike, forums ignite, and collectors rummage instantly through their personal holdings. Because the possibility remains that more exist somewhere. Collectors who understand this chase know something. Value in rare coins isn't just about metal composition. It's about the anomaly, the unexpected fall, the printing plate that ran too early or too late. Wealth is created in the tiny gap between what the mint intended and what actually entered circulation. And for investors seeking long-term legacy, these discoveries are the closest thing to time travel, an object that continues to gain value, simply because the world ignored it for too long. But let's step inside the mindset of a serious American coin collector between the ages of 30 and 65. They remember a time before digital payments, when spare change mattered, when the child could hold a handful of coins and feel physically what wealth meant. That nostalgia fuels modern collecting. It creates emotional oxygen around the hunt. When a coin like the 1990 to Denver transitional reverse issue surfaces, it doesn't just sell. It reawakens something. It reminds people that history is still alive, still discoverable, still hiding in pockets and drawers. Now, what makes this coin so valuable monetarily? The subtle reverse design was meant to debut the following year on circulation strikes. That meant the 1990 to Denver transitional pieces should never have existed. Numismatists call this a transitional error, and history shows that transitional errors can become legends. Consider how the transition from silver to copper, nickel, and dimes and quarters in the 1960s created rare crossover strikes worth extraordinary sums decades later. The 1990 to Denver Abraham Lincoln 1 cent with the proof style reverse is following that same path quietly at first, then explosively. Auction events have shown that demand is not only strong, but growing. The most astonishing sale approached nearly $1,977,000, according to certified reports and bidding results that shocked market analysts. These are not speculative cryptocurrency levels of emotional volatility. These are long-term collectors, investors, and legacy buyers who understand scarcity. They know something profound. Rarity is never manufactured after the fact. When the supply is truly microscopic, time becomes the only multiplier. Imagine the emotional weight of discovering one in your own collection. A person might feel their pulse quicken, their mind race, their hands shake. This is the same psychological phenomenon observed when individuals first realize they own misprinted banknotes, early pattern strikes, or early 20th century gold pieces recovered from estate collections. The heart reacts before the brain does, because the mind knows this one coin could be worth more than a house, a retirement fund, or a college education. But before we continue, let me interrupt with a surprising fact. In the United States numismatic market, coins worth more than most vehicles can still go unnoticed by novice sellers because they are listed online under generic labels such as 1990 to D-Penny. Dealers have documented scenarios where rare transitional cents were sold for face value in coin jars at garage sales. It still happens because knowledge, not metal, determines the value of a coin. So how does one identify the rare examples? On the reverse of the coin, observe the topography spacing between certain letters in United States of America and the boulder. Sharper detailing intended for proof dies. But here's the tension: many collectors over-identify coins, believing they have a treasure, only to discover the standard reverse style. That emotional roller coaster is part of the numismatic journey. The joy is in the suspense, the possibility, the what if. And speaking of suspense, here is another cliffhanger worth considering. If fewer than a dozen are known, what happens to pricing if only one or two more appear? Would the scarcity increase value or dilute it? Economists debate this, but serious coin investors know the deeper truth. In rare collectibles, spikes in interstore headlines often increase both demand and supply velocity. The market broadens. More eyes start searching drawers, estate lots, and family collections. Auctions grow competitive, and then higher prices follow. This psychological shift has been seen in the past. When the 1913 Liberty Head nickel became a media sensation in the mid-20th century, prices rose simply because Americans suddenly realized a nickel could be worth a fortune. Something similar is happening today with modern coinage from the late 20th century. Millennials and younger Gen X collectors are entering the market, pushing digital research, scanning rolls, using photography, analyzing die rotations, and challenging the assumption that only antique coins can be valuable. The numismatic hobby has expanded into data analysis, investment strategy, and long-term portfolio thinking. At the same time, older collectors who built their holdings by hand remain the backbone of the community. Many have lifetime relationships with dealers and grading services. They know that one truly rare coin can outperform traditional financial instruments, not merely in monetary value, but in emotional return. Because unlike stocks, a rare piece of American minting history can be physically held, displayed, passed down, and shown to grandchildren with a story that sounds almost mythical. This is where legacy becomes more than a marketing word. For some families, a rare coin is a time capsule, a reminder of a parent who saved their change in labeled jars, a symbol of the past preserved in metal, a conversation starter that connects generations. And when such a coin also represents a 6 or 7-figure financial value, its meaning becomes almost transformational. But let's inject a small rhetorical twist. If such an incredible coin exists, why hasn't the United States Mint confirmed the exact number struck? Because in the early 1990s, production records focused on total mintages, not micro anomalies. Transitional errors were not meticulously tracked. Dies were replaced, repaired, tested, and rotated, sometimes without official documentation. Modern collectors have become detectives, piecing together minting sequences, diagnostics, and specimen discoveries like forensic historians. And this is where the story takes on cinematic depth. Imagine a mint worker in 1990 to switching coin dies, unaware that a proof reverse die had been mixed into a bin meant only for circulation. Imagine the press striking tens of thousands of ordinary pieces, and just a handful of extraordinary ones. Imagine those rare few falling into bags and buckets, shipped through distribution hubs, handed out at grocery stores, post offices, banks. The universe of chance narrowed to a pinpoint. Someone somewhere received a pocketful of coins and unknowingly held a future treasure. Now zoom out to the present. Collectors study dye markers, reverse spacing anomalies, and mint luster patterns with magnifiers and digital microscopes. Certified grading companies authenticate discoveries, sealing them into transparent holders that transform the coin not only into an artifact, but into a validated asset. Once a population count becomes official, bids escalate. Wealth managers will typically diversify into real estate, equities, and precious metals are discovering that rare transitional coins can behave like fine or finite, emotionally resonant, and resilient to inflation. But there is one more hook of thought worth holding. If such a coin can hide in plain sight for decades, what else in modern American circulation has yet to be discovered? Collectors sometimes forget that today's pocket change could be tomorrow's news headline. The 1992 Denver Abraham Lincoln transitional reverse coin teaches a profound lesson. Not all treasure lies buried. Some of it jingles unnoticed in the public sphere until someone with curiosity, patience, and knowledge recognizes it. So for the viewer holding inherited coins from a parent or a grandparent, for the person sorting rolls for a side hobby, or the investor searching for the next asset class, before the world catches on this story is more than $1 million anecdote. It is an invitation, a reminder that history is not finished, that wealth does not always announce itself, that discovery still belongs to those who look closely. Perhaps tonight, someone watching this will open a small envelope, a drawer, a box long forgotten, and tilt a copper-plated coin under a reading lamp. Maybe they will notice that something looks different. Maybe their pulse will quicken. And maybe, just maybe, they will find that one coin that should never have existed. And if that happens, the story of the 1992 Denver transitional Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin will grow again not as a rumor, but as another chapter in the strange, thrilling journey of American numismatics, where every coin, even the smallest, carries a possibility, where history hides in metal, and where ordinary Americans can still discover extraordinary value without ever leaving home. ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check important info.